Los Angeles City Council's Homelessness and Poverty Committee. My name is Marquise Harris Dawson. I'm chair of this committee, joined by the vice chair of the 7th District, Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez, and our colleagues from the 9th District, Councilmember Kern Price, and to my right, Councilmember Mike Bonin of the 11th District. We have 4 items on the agenda today, sir, but we'll begin as we do every meeting with folks who have signed up for general public comment. We have 5 folks. One of them is named Antonia Ramirez. Another is named Patricia McAllister. Another one is named Herman. Another one is named Wayne. And another one is named Dr. Scott Sale. You all can come to the mic in any order. You'll have 1 minute to speak. Folks should know that there is, you can only speak for 2 minutes in this meeting. So if you're signed up for multiple agenda items, you should pick which 2 you will expire your minutes on. Thank you so much. Ms. Ramirez.
So again, I'm sorry, can I just, please, you said 2 minutes for all and 1 minute, so it'd be 3 minutes total, or I'm sorry?
So it'll be 2 minutes total. We'll restart your time. So this is general public comment at this moment. So that's what you got.
Thank you very much. I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have my shopping cart over there, and I am homeless. I live on the streets. My problem is that the city hires the bin, and there's one now, a bin, a storage place, and it's on this in La Placita. Chrysalis Enterprises has hired nothing but gangbangers. So many of us who are homeless, that are law-abiding, that are not junkies, that are not gangbangers or wetbacks, we have had our stuff stolen. So I've had to carry my stuff around with me. And then the second aspect is you have Cypress Security Service patrolling in Olvera Street and La Placita. They are afraid of the gangbangers because they themselves, most of the wetbacks, including Georgina, and Lujan and the other individuals are gangbangers. They harass the homeless people who are law-abiding. So we have a 2-pronged problem. We have to carry our stuff around and we get harassed. But the gangbangers and the junkies have priority. They do not get harassed, they do not get bullied, and they do not get thrown out. We are the ones that have to carry and trudge along with everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So if we called your name, no, you're good. You're good. You completed your minute. If we see your name again, we'll call it. In the meantime, Ms. McAllister.
My general comment is there is enough affordable housing in Los Angeles. The Democrats helped smuggle 4 million illegal aliens into this city. And right now, your city attorney wrote an ordinance where illegal aliens can cross into the border today and move into Section 8 housing. You go by these tents, you drive by or walk by, you see no Mexicans, no Asians. They're in the affordable housing. We don't need affordable housing. We need you to enforce the laws and get these illegal aliens out of affordable housing, okay? See, I know why you help move them in there, so that you can write all these laws saying you need more money and you're not building a darn thing. All I can see is you're stealing. See, I know the game. You create the problem, then ask for the money, and then the money disappears. Get these illegal aliens out of affordable housing. And President Trump is doing a great job, because if they don't have jobs, they can't get welfare. They can't get food stamps. That's going to run their rear ends out of this country.
Been joined by Councilmember Huizar for a full complement of members of the Homelessness and Poverty Committee. Mr. Herman.
So when does it become a crime to safely park in your car? When does it become a crime to regard your home as your car?
So this is general public comment, Mr. Herman. So
yeah.
You're speaking to agenda items.
You're fucking interrupting my time, bro.
I sure am. And fucking if you don't stay on appropriate topics, we'll end your time altogether.
I'm talking about how unsafe it is. Is it safe? Yeah, I sleep in my fucking car every so often. It's safe. So don't tell me I'm fucking off topic when I'm fucking on topic when you don't have enough housing, as Ms. McAllister pointed out, because fucking wetbacks like Jose Huizar take all our fucking homes off and built these fucking Pueblo mansions of homelessness in the fucking El Pueblo. And on behalf of all those in El Pueblo, like they told me to tell Huizar, fuck Huizar for not representing them and giving them information regarding homelessness, because nobody wants some fucking dirtbag politician like Jose Weezer fucking up their community and fucking up their neighborhood and fucking Rochelle. Fuck Rochelle.
Mr. Spindler.
Very good, yes. So we spent our afternoon today in the El Pueblo, better known as El Pueblo, Los Angeles, on behalf of all the merchants that lost their parking lot to Jose Weezer. Fuck you, and fuck Rochelle Weezer Rios as well for taking our fucking parking away. Goats like us, well, you know, he drives me, and we would park in our little parking lot on Aliso. Jose Weezer remembers that, and that cocksucker knows it used to cost $7 for a day of parking. He also knows that the Pueblo uses it for events. Now the kids can't park their vans, their parents can't pick them up to do dance routines and music because of this fucking drunk. The fucking drunk, according to City Watch, that never paid the city back its $200,000 in legal costs. So get this fucking wetback off of here, send him back to Zacatecas, and give us back our goddamn parking lot, you fucks, assholes.
That's your time. So, Mr. Clerk, we have all of our items today are related, so I'll ask you to read all of them into the record.
Yes, sir.
And then we will commence the discussion from there.
Okay, sir. Item number 1 is an item continued from the May 22nd meeting. It's a motion by Council Members Harris, Dawson, and Krikorian, and a city attorney report relative to addressing legal issues regarding the LAMC CS 85.02 vehicle dwelling and extending the regulation of the use of vehicle for dwelling on public streets and adding safe parking sites to the list of restricted vehicle dwelling areas. Item number 2 is also an item continued from the May 22nd meeting. It's a motion by Council Members Blumenfield and Bonin and a city attorney report relative to addressing legal issues regarding the Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 85.02, vehicle dwelling, and the proposed amendments, including the creation of an increased enforcement zone within a set distance from safe parking locations. This item was also referred to the Transportation Committee. Item number 3 is an item continued from the May 22nd Homelessness and Poverty Committee meeting. It's a motion by Council Members Englander, Rodriguez, Harris, Dawson, relative to a review of the effect of the Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 85.02 on Los Angeles City communities. Item number 4 is a motion by Council Members Krikorian, Martinez, Buscaino, and Rue, relative to an ordinance that sunsets the provision of Los Angeles Municipal Code 85.02 and replaces it with an ordinance and LAMC change that would look to equitably address vehicle dwelling without pushing vehicles from one neighborhood to another.
Thank you so much. So we'll ask City Attorney Lassa, Los Angeles Police Department, I believe I saw LAPD there, to join us at the table. And so we have 4 items, all on our overnight parking ordinance 8502. And so we would just ask you all to give a brief overview or an overview of where we are with regards to that policy now, what some of the challenges are, and how we might proceed going forward. Yes, you.
Us. Good morning, Council. Good afternoon, Council members. David Michelson with the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office. Here with me is one of my colleagues, Nicole Carcel. We're pleased to try to answer any questions you may have with respect to, in particular, Los Angeles Municipal Code 85.02. That's the section of the municipal code that regulates vehicle dwelling within the public street. The most important thing to keep in mind, which is addressed in at least one of the motions, that section 8502 will sunset, therefore expire come July 1st. And I know one of the motions seeks to potentially extend the life of that city law for another, I believe, 18 months. There's some other aspects of some of the motions that are also before you as well. But again, sort of the primary thrust may be the concern over the upcoming sunset. And again, we're here to answer any questions you may have of our office.
Paul Duncan with LASA. From our side, we have seen a bit of a challenge with getting additional, say, parking sites. So in order to be able to really effectively, enforce this, part of it is, having other alternatives besides just, the places on the map that would fall outside of the zones with residential and schools. So we have been making some ground with finding additional lots and partnering with, say, Parking LA and finding additional sites, but it has been a challenge to find adequate safe parking sites throughout the city of LA.
How many safe parking sites would you say you found?
Currently, we have 2 that are in operation, and we have another handful, about 5 or so, that are in discussion at various stages, as well as there's a couple other programs that are operating without loss of funding. So currently, I think there's about four sites in total operating, 2 funded by through LASA, and another 5 or so in the works.
So 10.
If 10 would be, or 4 in operation and potentially 10 that could come to
Got
fruition.
it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Dominic Choi, LAPD Homeless Coordinator. Specifically to 8502, I just looked at kind of what the usage was of this municipal code. Over 2017, LAPD wrote 132 8502 RFCs, or release from custodies. The breakdown of those: Central Bureau 17, South Bureau 29, West Bureau 27, and Valley Bureau 42. I would tell you overall the use of this this code is very minimal with the number of contacts we have with either vehicle dwellers or just homeless in general. So just kind of puts things in perspective. I think there are some challenges with 8502 with an officer having to prove dwelling versus just expired registration or parking where you're not allowed to park, those types of things. That's kind of my update. First quarter of 2018, we only had 28 8502 citations being issued.
The first quarter
Of 18.
Of 18.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And council members, it might be helpful if I just very quickly recap what the law actually provides for, so we're all sort of on the same page. 85.02 in the Muni Code prohibits vehicle dwelling between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. on any residential street. And it also prohibits vehicle dwelling at any time within a 500-foot radius of a sensitive use, and under the law, the sensitive use would either be a licensed school, preschool, or daycare facility. And the law also defines what is meant by vehicle dwelling. A penalty is an infraction under the law. The first penalty is $25, second is $50, third is $75. And generally speaking, that's sort of the parameters of the law itself. And importantly, it is not a parking restriction. It is a conduct restriction. That's why there's no signage posted.
Okay. And really quickly, so 85.02 expires on June 30. Let's say we let it run and expires. That's also, I think, the first day of recess for the council. What becomes the law at that point?
So if no action is taken by council, it becomes legally effective before July 1, 85.02 will have sunsetted, and that means people will be allowed to vehicle dwell on any street within the city of Los Angeles as long as they are otherwise lawfully parked. So if they're at a meter, they'd have to be putting money in the meter. They cannot be in a red zone, a red curbed restriction. But as long as they're lawfully parked, they'd be able to vehicle dwell.
So it wouldn't be illegal to dwell in a legal parking space in a residential area?
Correct. Currently, overnight, it would be illegal to vehicle dwell in a residential area overnight, but that restriction would come and go.
Go away.
July 1,
if
that's
we,
right.
did that. Okay, any other comments? So we have, members, we have 4 motions before us today, and hopefully we can give ourselves some breathing room to deal with the issues that are, one, the issues that this law was created to deal with, and 2, issues that have come up since it's been implemented. One of the motions before you today asks that we extend 8502 in its presence form for 6 months. That would give us time to go on recess, come back, and get report backs on really 3 issues that the other motions that we have before us today ask for. One asks us to look at the possibility to build in some equity around where overnight parking availability is under the law. Another one asks us for a report from LAPD to look at the pros and cons, which you kind of began to lay out in a very general sense. And the other one asked us to look at, in places where safe parking sites are established, can there be different restrictions on overnight parking in the immediate area around the safe parking site? So those are the 3 things that these motions ask you all to come back with report backs after we're back from recess in late July. And then that gives us the opportunity to come back to it, incorporate our best thinking and the ideas that work, and get something that's a little bit more long term. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to my colleagues, beginning with Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership on this, and thank you for the report, or at least for the update of where we are on this real important issue. Just a couple of questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Is there a provision that requires vehicles parked in proper zones to move on a regular basis? I currently have a location where an RV has been parked for over a year, and according to LADOT, they can't touch it based on the 72-hour rule because someone is residing in it. So are we in a catch-22 situation? Are we sort of
Well, from an enforcement perspective, yes, so 72 hours. I'm sorry, 72 hours is the time limit in which a vehicle has to move from a public street. The challenge is when somebody's dwelling in the vehicle, then DOT can't impound that vehicle. And for that matter, neither can LAPD. Again, that now, if we can prove dwelling, that's going to resort back to 8502. And then we can cite the individual for dwelling, and that's an infraction. So DOT will not cite if somebody's dwelling, or will not impound if somebody's dwelling in a vehicle. LAPD's challenge is we have to get that person out of that vehicle in order for us to impound it. And even with RVs or oversized vehicles, sometimes impounding can be problematic because we have to make an appointment in advance. We have to ensure that the vehicle is cleared of any hazardous materials.
Right.
The challenges you've already heard about. So.
Right. We have several other locations where vehicles, including RVs, are parked. They're not in a green zone and aren't being cited. And that's because someone is living in them that prevents any kind of citation from occurring. But my question, I guess, is, are each one of these going to have a HOPE team intervention? Or what do you suggest we do?
Well, again, the challenge, if somebody is in the vehicle and we knock on the vehicle and no one comes to the door, no one answers, we can't go in even though we believe somebody may be dwelling. That's the challenge of proving vehicle dwelling. I would say no, not every RV is going to need a HOPE type of intervention or response. I think in the longer term, these areas, if there's more than one, I mean, you're talking about one, I believe, but if there's more than one in an area, that may be what we call a CAPR or SARA project for a senior lead officer to eventually make contact and get some type of willing compliance by these individuals. But I think from a law enforcement perspective, it's going to take persistence and being present there day after day. Again, that's time and resources. And also, quite frankly, it's going to take an expertise from the officer that's going out there to know all these rules.
Right. Well, we know that that the RVs are an additional challenge. We even have instances now of people renting RVs to homeless people that are parked. And so, and again, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if there's any way for us to look into that, to review the practice, to review what other steps we can take. Perhaps a safe parking area specifically for RVs might be an answer. But we need to address this issue in a comprehensive way. So thank you for your comments. It's just frustrating on behalf of I know individuals who are trying to be trying to be placed, but certainly on behalf of neighbors and us as policy officials trying to craft the policies that are sensible, sensitive, and yet effective. So, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
This is David Michelson again with the City Attorney's Office. I should add that more recently there have been signs of success in terms of citing safe parking locations throughout the city, and certainly we're hoping to see much more effort in that regard. Sort of almost be a companion to 8502, whatever 8502 ends up looking like after July 1st. I mean, for instance, in Council District 2, within the last few months, using, I believe it was an LADOT lot, safe parking location was identified, working with LASA and LASA's Spa, which was LA Family Housing. That parking lot now is a safe parking location. It is up and running. We, in our office, worked with DOT and everyone else involved, coming up with a right of entry agreement that could be then used really anywhere in the city that and other sites can be found. So hopefully that shows some signs of momentum in locating additional sites in each council districts to provide some safe off-site parking locations.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a harder conversation to have every time because I mean, the more you think about this subject matter, this is just an incredibly frustrating and really stupid situation. I mean, it's like through the looking glass. I feel like it's a policy designed by the Mad Hatter. We've got 8502 before us today. We've got the OVO restrictions. 8502 is essentially unenforceable. There have been citations issued, but it's essentially unenforceable because it's very hard for LAPD to prove that somebody's living in a vehicle. And frankly, living in a vehicle is preferable to telling them, as was the case in a previous court decision, get out of the car and sleep on the sidewalk. I mean, we don't provide enough housing and shelter, so people live in their vehicles, and then we tell them they can't live in their vehicles, and so they wind up on the sidewalk, and then we get upset about that. The current version is at least a slight improvement over what was there before, because for the first time, the city of LA said it's okay to park here in the green. That was an improvement over previous, which said you can't live anywhere. At least this says you can park in the green. But it's imperfect, and it's still not where we need to be. Safe parking is finally starting. And I think we've removed most of the roadblocks, and your talk about the right of entry permit, I think, is really sort of one of the last hurdles. I've put a few more lots on the block for safe parking LA to consider. You can look at any government lot in my district because the churches aren't going to come online until we start doing the government lots. I think the churches need to see, yeah, government's serious about this. So you can look at anyone in my district. I'm okay with extending this for a short period of time. I like what Mr. Harris Dawson said about breathing room to get this right. I think 6 months is breathing room. I wouldn't want to see us do longer than that. I wouldn't want to see a year or 18 months because that's not breathing room. That's ducking room. I mean, we won't deal with it for a year, and then in the last 6 months we'll start thinking about it again. So I think 6 months is the right amount of time to continue telling people, yes, you can be in the green zones while we try to get more muscular about getting the safe parking lots on board.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. So if there are no other comments from committee members, we'll take public comment on all 4 items. So I have Mr. David Bell, Mr. Steve Diaz, and Jed Perriott, I think. Yeah. They can just move to the side so I can see the clock. I'm sure we're going to need you back.
Good afternoon. My name is David Bell. I was here on something else. I signed up for all 4 items. I'm not exactly sure where it fits in. I guess the thing that I would only say is that when it comes to sort of drawing the green zones or whatever, I would request that the council take input from the community. For example, there's a street in my neighborhood, Talmadge, which runs right by there's a studio there. It runs Talmadge as it runs off of Hyperion. And I believe that's a green zone, but the problem with it is literally it's a kind of a feeder street for 4 different schools. There's Franklin Elementary, there's King Middle School, there's the Leela French School, so it's a kind of a high traffic area for a lot of school kids on Talmadge there. So that's one street that our community is concerned with, and it's not to say that, it's just that there isn't any sort of regulation as to, proximity to those. So just to ask for community input on what amounts to a green zone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Steve Diaz, and I am with LA CAN. We're here today to oppose the continuing criminalization of houseless people by extending or continuing to have in place 8502. 8502 should be sunsetted, and those resources should be diverted elsewhere. As it currently stands, 8502 basically incentivizes someone having to sleep on the street instead of sleeping in a more safer vehicle. Think about that. It's illegal to sleep in your car, but yet technically folks can get out their car, sleep on the sidewalk. That's kind of a weird contradiction, right? Lastly, it's really important to note that it's conditions like this and it's policies like this that create the political conditions where people end up opposing shelters and end up opposing expansion of services, because if you allow for a certain part or a certain group of people to be criminalized, you continue to sort of just fuel the fire for criminalization instead of diverting that money into much needed housing. Thank you.
I'm also here on behalf of the Los Angeles Community Action Network and the Democratic Socialists of America. LA CAN is opposed to the criminalization of homelessness, as is DSA LA, including the enacting or strengthening of laws that punish behavior of homeless residents when no viable alternatives exist. 8502 creates another political contradiction in which elected officials publicly state their goal of ending homelessness, but continue to criminalize it, masking it in names like hope or heart or reset. As it currently stands, 8502 incentivizes people to sleep in the street instead of their cars. You need to get rid of, in DSA's view, all the ordinances that criminalize the unhoused, or at least put a moratorium on them immediately. We urge you to sunset 8502. While voters have invested heavily in the creation of permanent supportive housing, it has yet to reach the scale of need. Safe parking locations are in a similar situation where they have yet to reach the scale of need. Since that does not seem likely, given the number of motions urging sticker enforcement, we urge you to not add further enforcement, especially the prohibitions of parking near a safe parking site.
Don Hicks, Liz Hirsch, and Mike O'Gara.
Good afternoon. I'm Dawn Hicks with Venice Community Housing. BCH is opposed to the criminalization of homelessness, including enacting or strengthening laws that punish behavior of homeless residents when no other alternative exists. Sleeping in a vehicle is one of those behaviors, and is why we oppose the passage of LAMC 8502 18 months ago. Across the city and in our Venice neighborhood, a vehicle is often the last resort to providing shelter to some of these individuals. Since it seems especially punitive to criminalize people sleeping in their vehicles during nighttime hours when outdoor sleeping is actually allowed, we urge you to sunset LAMC 8502. Since that doesn't seem likely, given the number of motions urging stricter enforcement, we urge you not to further add enforcement, especially the prohibitions of parking near a safe parking site. That's a path we've been down before over a decade, and it doesn't work. Focus on housing and health-based solutions and not criminalization. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Liz Hirsch. I'm a resident of Hollywood. I'm a parent. I'm a member of Democratic Socialists of America, Los Angeles. And I want to echo the comments of the previous speakers in saying that housing is a human right. Poverty shouldn't be criminalized. I don't think law enforcement is going to end homelessness because only housing will. And I don't understand the motivation to extend 8502 unless it's to criminalize poverty and actually fuel the homelessness crisis by increasing financial hardship for people already on the verge. And if the stated goal of this committee is to reduce homelessness, the ordinance shouldn't be extended. If 8502 also is unenforceable, Councilman Bonin, as you point out, then let it expire.
My name's Mike O'Gara. I've lived 45 years in Sun Valley, and we have a major problem with people dwelling in their trailers, mobile homes, campers. They come in, and we have a long distance along the San Fernando tracks. 3 people come in, pretty soon it's 20 people. They seem to be hoarders, and they don't put the stuff in their trailers, and when they're along the tracks, we develop with a health problem. And that's a major problem. And then the trash, when they park along in the streets, and there's lots of streets, is a major problem in Sun Valley. Lots of streets where we have 3, 4, 5 of these mobile homes, and then it's loaded with trash. You can't walk by on a sidewalk, and nothing's done about that. Thank you. I will speak again on number 4.
So you should go ahead and do that now.
I'm like Mr. Bonin. I don't know where you go with this. If you can sunset it for 6 months and start making some changes to the ordinance as written, I think that definitely needs to be done. I don't think you should throw the baby out with the bathwater and do away with it. And there's another part of that that's escaping me, but
it's okay.
I think you just need to put it together and pay attention to it and see what you can do, and 6 months sounds like a good idea. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Keep working on it. Thank you so much. Peggy Kennedy, Antonio Ramirez, Patricia McAllister, and Jed Perriott, I have you for another minute on item 4, if you would like it. You were so eloquent in your first minute.
Hi, Peggy Lee Kennedy with the Venice Justice Committee. Thanks for actually making eye contact and listening to me. I noticed that LASA didn't actually give the number of spaces that were in operation right now. That means how many vehicles that were going to be in safe parking during the hours when it's illegal to be on the street. And until you have made a major impact on that number, at least the number that LASA counted for 2017, which was over 4,500 for the county, which I think was severely underestimated. Why are you even doing this? You are only displacing people and criminalizing them. You know, a couple days ago, I met this woman, and she was relatively wealthy. She had a big home in the Marina del Rey, and she said they should all move to Idaho. So, I mean, that sounds stupid, but that's what you guys are doing. You're displacing people. I asked her, all 60,000? And she said, yeah, why not? Because that's really an ignorant position to take. I'm not calling you a name. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense. If you believe that you cannot criminalize your way or displace your way out of this situation, then why are you moving forward on a law that does exactly that? And in fact, you want to expand it. That makes no sense. I mean, I don't expect you to be great humanitarians, but, you know, these are human beings. They have stories. You know what? We're in a huge affordable housing desert. And these people have no place else to go, most of them. I know. This is a life issue. We are like making people sicker and dying sooner by doing this.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to speak on behalf of my friend John Seeley, who was supposed to be here but couldn't make it, who has lived in his vehicle for some time and finally got some permanent supportive housing, unfortunately, all the way in Pacoima, and he works in Hollywood, so that's very hard for him. But what he would have come here to talk about is the harassment that he received while living in his car from property owners and housed peoples who would call him a criminal and say, "I'm scared for my children that you live here." John is a harmless individual and received constant harassment. And I feel that as representatives of the city, police officers, council members, I have heard many times in public and at City Hall use language to criminalize the homeless that is dangerous. Things like gangsters, drug dealers, predators. That is dangerous and harmful language to throw around that only perpetuates these negative stereotypes that then get projected by community members toward the unhoused. That needs to stop, in addition to the criminalization ordinances.
Thank you so much.
Hi, you asked here for the city attorney to write some legal documents about the issue of people parking. Why don't you ask the city attorney to write a document on what these 4 or 5 million illegal aliens are doing in affordable housing, Section 8 housing? See, you're not going to criminalize these people living on the street in their cars, okay? What do you want them to do? See, what you're doing is you penalizing them and fining them, and then this is how low life you all are. Taking their cars, selling them, put the money in your pocket, and then put them on the street. That's how low life you are. See, I know, I can feel you. I'm in with you. You're worse than, this is lower than low. And this city attorney, they give themselves $2,000 to $4,000 raises every six months. I have the documentation. $148 million budget with 800 lawyers. They're the ones who are writing these criminal laws, criminalizing the homeless. The city attorney's office. That's why they have 800. They told me, I went over there, they said, we're here to protect each other, not you all.
Thanks so much.
You got 90% of the homeless that are fucking wetbacks and gangbangers and junkies, and they comprise 90% of the crimes against legal law-abiding citizens. We get robbed every fucking night. We get attacked, beaten, brutalized every night, every day. Okay, so I'd like to hear some of these jackasses talk out of their asses. And furthermore, yeah, these dwellings look tacky and makes neighborhoods look dilapidated and downtrodden. And primarily gangbangers and wetbacks, the inhabitants of those communities, are what brings down the look of the environment. However, I don't want to see good law-abiding people living on the streets and exposed to the elements. Yet the two most dangerous, violent human components that pose the dangers are the goddamn wetbacks and goddamn gangbangers and the goddamn junkies. These junkies and gangbangers can afford to buy campers, pickups, trucks, vans, and all that with their drug money for dwelling, and consequently run the criminal organizations out of there. Then they have their drug sales, vehicle sales, and all that. Deport the motherfuckers and give us a safe place to sleep and rest, and give us back our homes. Fuck the goddamn gangbangers and fuck the wetbacks. Give them a napalm up their asses.
Peggy Kennedy. If you want to, you don't have to. Looks like you want to.
Just so you know, in 2003, our Venice Justice Committee lobbied the National Lawyers Guild because a person that we knew, a lifelong resident of Venice, was being criminalized by the previous version of 8502. And it was defeated, but you know, when they came back and towed everybody and arrested them for 8502 and created that lawsuit, you know, the city, you know, if you're going to create these situations that only leads to litigation, it's your fault. It's really your fault when it happens. And you can't really blame the lawyers, because it's the actions of the city that creates the real crime here when these people are being harmed.
Thank you. Wayne. All right, Ms. Ramirez. Made your point loud and clear. Let other people speak. Quickly, Mr. Spindler. Start the time, please.
Just making a point, you dumb asshole. So, all right. So anyway, how did this begin? Well, first it began with Jose Weezar's retard son being put in an RV on the street, and then he put his fat wife in there while he was cheating on her.
You got to stay on the subject.
Yes.
This is, you are not to address committee members.
We're
You are
telling
to
you
address
about
the
the
issue.
statute. We're
So
telling
stick
you.
to the statute.
We're telling you about the statute, asshole. So that's how it happened. And then they came up with 8502 because they had to have 4 numbers to make it look legal. See, so this piece of shit got challenged in the Ninth Circuit. You're allowed to stop and rest versus live, but we have no standards between the two. So it's overbroad and unconstitutional, you dumb shit. So that's why, fuck this, fuck you, and fuck the retard son of Jose Weezar.
Stop it. Get out.
Well, no,
You're done. Your time's up.
No, you gave the
Your time is up, Mr. Herman.
You gave the white people additional time. Did you remember? He gave white people additional time to talk. Because he's a nigger. That's what he does.
I think it was 8th grade. Mr. Herman.
So now that you heard regarding 85.02, fuck the White Valley people. No one gives a fuck about white, Caucasian fucking Valley people. I sure hell don't.
Talk to the motion.
Because they
Talk to the motion.
criminalize under 85.02 the same way I oppose with CAM. You must allow people to sleep, rest in their motherfucking cars or vehicles, RVs, whatever the fuck. Maybe the White Valley fucking people should have spoke up at the time when they noticed 2 individuals sleeping in their car overnight. Instead, this fucked up city allowed a population of people to grow and become an eyesore, and now you white racist motherfucking Jews want to take the money
Stay on the
and ask for
subject.
bonds under so-called 85.02 to criminalize people for use of vehicles and dwelling on the public. And fuck Jose Weezer, that bald motherfucker, and Rochelle
Stay
and
on the
his retarded
subject.
son.
Stay on the subject. All right. Close us out. Doug Haynes and Steve Diaz. Mr. Spindler, you're done. Goodbye. Please leave, Mr. Spindler. That's okay. Someone's coming over to escort you out. Mr. Herman, you can leave too. Leave this building. Sergeant, please see Mr. Herman out. Our apologies, Mr. Haynes. Proceed.
Thank you. My name is Doug Haynes. These meetings are always very exhausting. I'm with 2 Hollywood neighborhood councils, East Hollywood Neighborhood Council and Hollywood Studios Neighborhood Council. And I would like to say something that's separate from the agenda item. I have admired Councilman Weezar for many years, and I've appreciated his consideration of everyone who comes and speaks, particularly because I chair 2 planning committees. I wanted to let you know, last week one of my neighbors who's 74 years old came up to me. He was looking for a new apartment because he was given 30 days to move out from this house he's lived in for 30 years. And he said the only thing he can afford is an RV. We're seeing a wave of evictions in Hollywood because of the TOC ordinance. I've mentioned this before in the Planning Committee. The generous incentives that were created by the City Planning Commission have had a negative effect. they've created more homelessness than anything else. Because of that, I've been seeing particularly single-family homes are being targeted by speculators because they're not under rent control. And so those people are evicted. I had another family that had been in their home for 40 years, and they were given 60 days to move out. When their mom had dementia, they went to the funeral 1 week. The next week, they were forced to leave. This is a tragic situation. At the same time, I understand current prices issue about these vans. We've had tremendous problems with RVs and so forth, where we've had prostitution and drug use and so forth. They have to move along. We have no enforcement by LAPD on these issues. They don't want to get involved. I understand the complexity of this matter, but on one hand, you cannot have individuals taking over your street. On the other hand, you cannot criminalize people who have no other place to go. So for us in Hollywood, I would hope that you would look at the planning issues because it's driving this problem for us. SB 827 is something that we're experiencing right now in Hollywood because of all the incentives that are encouraging developers. As I mentioned before, homes that a year ago were going for $800,000 are now $1.5 million. No one can afford that except speculators who only want to tear them down and force people out. Thank you.
Thank you. Pass, Mr. Diaz. Okay, thank you. That concludes our public comment on items 1 through 4. Yes, sir, Mr. Bonin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to underscore and reiterate something. There was some of the public testimony which said that the ordinance before us makes it illegal to live in a vehicle in Los Angeles. It doesn't. It says where in Los Angeles you can live in a vehicle. The previous version of 8502 said you can't live in a vehicle. This version says where you can live in a vehicle. Now, you can make an argument that we should legalize it everywhere. That's a fair, intellectually honest argument. We don't allow anything anywhere in the city of Los Angeles. The whole city isn't residential. The whole city isn't industrial. The whole city isn't commercial. Everything has restrictions on where it is. You can certainly argue that it doesn't create enough areas where people live. That's a fair argument, and I might agree with it. But it's not accurate to say that this says that you can't live anywhere in your vehicle, because the city of Los Angeles changed that when it put this ordinance in place.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. And I would just add to that, as we look to study improvements or changes in the law, the idea is that we learn from what we have experienced in the last 18 months about having certain places, what works about that, what doesn't work, both for people who have no other place to go besides their vehicles and the communities around them. And so with that, I will ask that items 2, 3, and 4 we continue for 60 days, at which time we'll expect report backs from the appropriate departments on all of those matters. If there's no objection, that'll be the order for items 2, 3, and 4. And then on item 1, we have a specific direction. We request that the city attorney prepare and present an ordinance to extend the 8502 ordinance for 6 months, which we will note is an amendment to the original motion, and instruct the Department of City Planning, CAO, CLA, and LASA, with the assistance of the city attorney and LAPD, and any department that is necessary, to report on the feasibility of developing vehicle dwelling parking programs and prohibiting vehicle dwelling near these program sites, and restricting vehicle dwelling parking sites to be within 500 feet of licensed schools, preschools, daycare facilities, and parks. Is that good? All right. If there's no discussion or objection, that'll be the order. Question? No. So ordered. Any other business?
That clears the desk, sir.
Excellent. We're adjourned. Thank you all so much.